Thomas and Alina. May the smoke of this medicine plant be a vessel of prayers manifested into the physical reality in natural, easy, and fruitful ways, in prayer to the highest good of all living beings.
Thanks, Alina.
Yeah, indeed. I could just hold this over that for a while. Are we live? Oh yeah, there we go.
We're live. Well, recording. The recording is happening. We're
we
live
awake?
in bits to the hard drive.
Are we awake? That's the real question, right?
After that mate, a little more awake.
A little bit more awake. All right. Just set that there, I guess. Let that,
Mm-hmm.
let me have some of that. Nice.
So when we were hunting for candle holders, I discovered this little book, which was my journal back in the year 2006 when I wrote some of my first songs. And we were just kind of tripping out on some of these lyrics. Some of them I remember because they turned into songs. But like some of the lyrics are some of the old original lyrics that I didn't wind up using.
What was going on back then, 2006?
In my life?
Yeah. Anything specific?
...2006 must have been...
2006.
2006 was a time period when I was making enough money programming that so other than that, I had been meditating for maybe a decade by that point. Maybe less. And my grandpa had turned me on to meditation. He was really into transcendental meditation, TM.
Oh, nice.
And I started reading Ram Dass and all the different things and reading, like, I was trying to find the actual words of the different founders of the different religions, and just have my own interpretation or just, be exposed directly to the ideas. But also in just the broader realm, there's the idea of, so I had been feeling very stuck in the dynamic of taking care of my mom, or being stuck in living with her, taking care of her, feeling kind of trapped by that circumstance because she needed a lot of help. And
when did your mother pass?
2008. And so I think in 2006 was right around the time that these ideas of you have to imagine the world the way you want it to be, and your thoughts, imagine the world. There's like Wayne Dyer, I think, was on PBS. He was kind of like a pop positive psychology guy. I forget his key phrase, but it was something like that. Just the same idea of The Secret, and you actually, like, you can't, and I had been dealing with a lot of resentment and, negative feelings around my situation. And then at kind of around in that 2005, 2006, I was beginning to have I have power over how I experience my reality on the one hand, and I also could be doing more imagining of how I want my life to actually be, which I have actually not been doing that much of. I've been stuck in the like resentment and
victim mode.
Yeah, victim. And so I think right around in 2005, 2006, I was shifting into like, how do I want my life to be? And I was beginning to write songs. Like, I played guitar for a long time, but it was around that time that I actually started to write songs.
It's a big thing to choose to be creative,
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was a time where I was imagining, I could live by myself and still take care of my mom living somewhere else, because I had been living with her, taking care of her. And that was part of that stuck feeling. And so I think 2006 was right around the time that she also started to develop breast cancer,
Hey.
which wound up short circuiting my separation plans because I stayed to help her through that. But in hindsight, I also, like, one way I've chosen to kind of find meaning in her getting breast cancer right around then was that it was kind of like she was unable to imagine us not living together. You know, she had too many negative memories of this house. She didn't want to live here. She didn't want to live some random place. You know, it was like wherever she wanted to be, she wanted to have me there to take care of her, you know.
So that's the background for these songs?
I don't know. That's the context of
fraught,
the time.
man.
There's a lot going on in that time. But it's not necessarily content in the songs.
Yeah.
But
At least not overt content, huh?
yeah.
What do you got? Can you read one?
Fear is the dark black night when you're all alone. A praying mantis caught in the something of the river. The black between the stars as far as your mind can see. Tears join the river, swept away downstream. Fire burns away the dreams, tearing at the seams. Death is a mountain that you climb your whole life.
That's great.
Feel the cold water on your skin. Time is a whistle in your head when you swim. Time ripens on the vine waiting for you to find.
That's a song, man. That's a good song right there.
Hear what your voice says to you in your mind. Hear where you sit now by the river flowing on and on. Yeah, I mean, this has C and V for chorus and verse, but of course the actual melody and chords are lost to history.
Are they? I don't know.
But, you know, they're in there somewhere maybe.
Yeah, I bet they are. I bet you could get back to find them or replace them.
Or, yeah, replace them. This is one that actually has chords. Outsider. I'm happy as an outsider to you. I don't need to be part of your little crew. You've got your little perceptions of me. Dear God, don't ever let me be so cruel. Yes, it could be that I see my reflection, but I at least try to make a connection. Warmth of heart is a plentiful thing. It does not discriminate by omission. Warmth of heart does not discriminate. Warmth of heart does not hesitate. I like that.
Yeah.
I like those ideas.
I think this is pretty remarkable, actually, that our last podcast, we were talking about intent, and you asked me about some intent related to how to make music. Do you remember this?
Remind me. Refresh my memory.
And I was saying that you have to express your intent out loud.
Uh-huh. All right. Yeah.
And you expressed out loud that you were going to write an album.
Record an album and finish it and put it up on Spotify and share it.
And then here we are, the next session here,
and
you find this songbook.
Right.
I don't know.
And it was a result of digging through some old box to try and find some candle holders to make this podcast be a ritual, invocational event.
So, I don't know. The whole thing seems kind of...
And there's a whole bunch of invocational stuff in that box that somehow got like put away on some shelf, you know.
Right.
It's very interesting. Just like sitting there waiting to be rediscovered, you know. And the fact that this was in there with it is very odd. It's like...
That's a precious little book, you know. I mean, if I found something like that to me would be like there's a reason why you find something like that.
Yeah.
You don't just turn around and put that back in the box and say, well, that was cool.
Right.
I mean, it's like, oh, holy shit, why am I getting this back now? 2006, that was 20 years ago. Almost 20 years ago.
Right. Wow. 20-year cycle. This is an interesting little tidbit. What do we do when the lawful is illegal and the unlawful is legal? When the illegalization is itself unlawful? When the lawful is a crime? When black is white and white is a myth? You dose on to keep from going completely crazy. When the fact that white is relative is used as a justification for seeking it out and destroying it. Not sure what I was referring to in particular, but you can draw your own conclusions. And then there's a lot of just miscellaneous. Would somebody please tell me which way is up? Desire turns in my stomach, reaches out towards its own annihilation. Threw my money out the door. I kind of remember actually how this song goes. I don't need it anymore. It's no good. It's a no good dirty whore. If I need some, I'll get some more. And right now I've got all I need. I've got all I need. No more working all night long, having no time for the song. If I get paid, it'll be for playing. I threw my money out the door, but it keeps coming after me. I can't take it anymore.
Yeah, I like it.
Can you buy the people with insincere beliefs in what you will do? Because only the people filled with the spirit of truth can make it right. You're like the rain that falls in the desert and never makes it to the sea. You're not the one. No, you're not. We all are the one, each and every one of us. You misled your people into the abyss. Your end is so sealed. We are but one river that everywhere flows, united in one cause. Love is all I know tonight. Your love is sweet as honey. Touch me one more time, my love. Your love warms my deepest depths. Here's some comedy. Here's some divine comedy. Why am I here? When I asked my dad, he said, be a man. And I didn't really. This is just riffing off of role playing. When I asked my dad, he said, be a man. My mom said, be yourself. Brother, get a life. Sister, be a star. Get real, go away and do your own thing. Be love. God, I already gave you a life. What, are you confused? Jesus, love your enemy as yourself. Satan, do what I tell you. My own conclusion, I am here because I am here. It's a mystery and one I get to define through my actions, non-actions, and decisions. Anyway, good stuff. I'm going to have to, turn some of these into songs.
Yeah, I think so.
So we were talking about resonance radio, like riffing on ideas about it, like the meta conversation of what this is that we're doing right now.
Yeah. And even bigger than that is just the whole resonance.org seems like a bigger umbrella than Resonance Radio.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so resonance.org. So this domain I got back in the late 90s when I had computer tech. It was the first domain I got, and I got it because me and a couple other people were running a little server that we were trading tech support time with a local nonprofit internet provider to put a server in their server room on their blazing fast T1 line, which nowadays is like I've got more speed here at my house than that whole server room did back then.
Yeah, right.
And we needed to, it was originally called Youth Space. But we weren't youth anymore. Like there was a variety of techie guys all hanging out. And so we needed a new name, and I suggested Resonance. And so I got the domain Resonance. Now it was my first, so that was pretty much the first domain. And at that point, I think I was enamored with, the nexus between physics, new and old physics. There was this emergence. I think I was influenced by Nassim Haramein and the kind of new physics.
Didn't you say he tried to buy this?
He did eventually, years later.
How much did he offer you for it?
I think he offered me $5,000.
This was how many years ago?
10 or 15 years ago. I don't remember.
But it's gone up 10 times by now.
Maybe. Yeah, probably.
I
wouldn't know. I don't. There are fewer people have tried to buy it recently, but every few years someone tries to buy it, and really cool projects, But
it's a good thing you're just sitting on it,
I've been attached to my own vision of what it could be, And no one, like, if any one of those projects had been even close to what I wanted it to be, I might have let it go, or I might have suggested that we collaborate or something.
So it sounds like you know what you want it to be.
So my original vision of what I wanted it to be was kind of a place to explore the leading edge of physics. You know, I think at the time I was really interested in 0 point energy and over unity, and you know, experiments in that, and just like exploring what is resonance on, you know, so it would be sequences of exploring what resonance is, almost like a physics 101 course, but with an emphasis on resonance, frequency, energy, light, sound, music, you know.
Right. I mean, it encompasses so many things, the word resonance, you
Yeah.
know. It's like a huge umbrella.
Yeah.
It really is. It's like, I think of resonance, like you mentioned, religion or spirituality or whatever. And I think of teachers, you know, it's like they each may have a different message or a different religion, but their truth resonates
Mm-hmm.
across whatever, right? I mean, there's something that's fundamental that resonates with people and with the past and
Yeah.
probably the future. And
Yeah, and the great teachers of all the ages, there's a commonality in there, you know, like in the Baha'i canon or the Baha'i teachings, you know, there's this idea that there's this essential unity between all of the great spiritual teachers. You know, it's the same message. There's, you know, they're all the same teacher in a sense. Like on the spiritual level, there's two sides of the great spiritual teachers. On the one side, they're in perfect unity because we're all part of the same unity, you know. But on the other side of it, there's specifics related to their time and place.
yeah,
And one of the problems is we get attached to the specifics,
even though the time and place changes.
even though the time and place changes. And then a new teacher comes along and they, you know, we get split up and divided between these different, we consider religion to be a plural thing. And like the Baha'i perspective is that religion is one. There is, you know, it's not to say that Baha'i is now the only true religion and all the others are not true. It's that it's beyond name, you know. And if we get attached to the specifics, which includes the name or the individual personalities of the teachers themselves, we miss the universal message of it.
Yeah, it's like there's this background that is this resonant source.
Mm-hmm.
And you identify with that, and then the words maybe can help, I don't know, further that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like I resonate with, you know, I mean, all of the different religions have something that is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part that you resonate with, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, resonance is it's a beautiful term, man.
Yeah, and as far as like the website, I mean, the interesting thing about resonance is it implies two different things that are in resonance with each other.
Relationship, yeah.
You know, there's a, yeah. And
yeah,
it's
nothing resonates in the void, you know, it's like the,
right.
It's like you have to have, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, same idea. Like some people, like Carver Mead talks about light only exists when there's a sender and a receiver,
Yeah.
you know? But it also is an invitation, or there's a potential there to explore the ways in which different things resonate, or the resonance across domain, you know, like between religion and science is probably the most interesting one to me.
Yeah, one time they weren't different. They were
right.
There was only one. There was science was religion in a certain sense. It's like natural scientists were. It's like most advances in natural science were made in monasteries and stuff like this, right?
Right.
I mean, yeah, it's like that's when they had the time to think about these things.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and like looking at it through the perspective of resonance, it's kind of a nexus of point or a central place where it's not really something in and of itself. It's more about relationship between things and looking at the connections and how different things relate and interconnect and affect each other and influence each other, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, and it seems like it's an interesting umbrella to have under which all sorts of different aspects can be expressed.
Right. So yeah, you got the resonance.org,
Mm-hmm.
and then underneath that you've got Resonance Radio, which is a podcast,
Mm-hmm.
which is where you're broadcasting these resonant ideas, right?
Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of simple.
Yeah, and resonance, resonating with different people, you know.
Ideas that resonate.
Yeah, ideas that resonate.
That's a good thing. Ideas that resonate on Resonance Radio.
That's a good, what do you call it?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Byline or something?
Yeah,
or
something like that.
tagline?
Tagline, yeah.
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 Ideas that resonate. I like that.
I like it too. We should write that down and record that.
It's been recorded
Oh, yeah, right.
real time. It's a great thing about pressing record before you brainstorm.
Yeah, I know, right? So, yeah, no, we were talking earlier about, it's like I wouldn't say, I guess I am primarily focused on monad and metagaya.
Mm-hmm.
But I love all those. I love religion. I've been studying religion all my life.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up religious.
Mm-hmm.
And then I became an atheist. But, you know, the fact is, religion to me is all about cosmology. It's like, what are we doing here?
Yep.
It's like, that's to me is the heart of any religion. It's like, it's an explanation of who we are and how we got here. And if you open the Bible, which is, you know, a particular religion, the very first chapter is cosmology.
True.
The very first chapter.
In the beginning.
The very first, in the beginning was. It's like it explains how we got here, what we're doing, why we're here, right from the beginning, and then the rest is just kind of built on top of that.
Right.
So that's why I want to go back to the very beginning. I want cosmology to me is the heart and the seed of any religion.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
because you're wanting to start a new religion.
Well,
no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
you're wanting to get back to.
I'd like to be like I want one of those hats. You know, one of those
right.
big weird hats. You know, like a monad hat. You know, with all the planets. You know, circling and stuff like that. You know.
I'm sure you could make that happen for yourself.
I'm gonna do that.
But I mean, the way I hear it, the way I translate that into my worldview is that to me sounds like you're wanting to get back to true religion, in a sense, you know. Which I know this came up once or twice before, which was one time at breakfast we were talking about religions and religion and all this, and you had said something to the effect of wanting to be of service to spirit. And I remember saying at that moment, like, that's it. That sounds like religion to me. And you're like, what?
I still don't. What do you mean by that? How's that sound religious to you? Being of service to spirit?
Because that to me is what true religion is. And I think we have these connotations of what religion being about, the like structure and like dogma and belief systems and people doing ritual together and, you know, having different variations. And like you said, there different religions might resonate with you, and there's stuff in each one that, you know, but to me, this idea of true religion as a singular thing is a much simpler essence that is common between all of those, that isn't any one of those things. It's kind of like in the Tao Te Ching, where it's like the Tao that can be named isn't the real Tao, you know, that kind of idea.
Yeah.
And so being of service to spirit is like on a fundamental level, like that resonates with, for example, the Baha'i daily prayer, you know, where it's about acknowledging God and then basically, I'm not going to quote it word for word, but it's basically an expression within that prayer. There's an expression of being of service and being devotional to a greater grand unity than just my own self. You know, it's kind of a relationship between the self and the divine.
Yep.
Which to me, that is just at a simple level, that the simplest essence is that it's being in devotion to the divine whole, you know, and or the source of the divine whole, which to me that's an interesting difference, but it's a lot closer to the same thing than, anyway.
Yeah, no, I I've had this thing on my mind about we were talking about it earlier about that there's two ways to look at this event that I'm going to describe. One is the magnetosphere of an Earth.
Okay.
Right. It's like
Oh yeah.
I think science looks at this as that the Earth is emanating this electromagnetic field. That there's a coil or some sort of mechanism which is causing this field to surround the Earth. But another way of looking at this, which is the way I like to look at it, is that the field is allowing or causing the Earth to manifest. So the field is the spirit in my sense. If we're looking at those terms that you were using for religion, it's like the spirit, you want to be a servant of the spirit. The servant is the manifestation.
The matter or
the matter or the body.
The object.
But the spirit is the field. And we don't give credence to fields because we can't see them. You know, but we know they're there because of the action they have, or the action or the activity of the bodies that exist within the field. So to me, it's like the field is the spirit. And if you want to be a service to the field, you know, you try to align yourself with that field. And you have to try to understand the field. And the field extends out to infinity. This is one thing we know about the field. So you have to try to encompass infinity into your thinking, which is, you know, not a simple thing to do, right? I mean, it's like infinity is, you know, mathematicians have been running from infinity for good reason for years. You know, it's really hard to understand. Yeah. You know.
Well, this reminds me of like Unzinger's, emphasis in his podcast or his YouTube channel of this current cutting edge work of defining the big G constant, big G of gravity,
right.
and that the people he's quoting, whose names I don't remember, are, especially there's a younger guy who's just, I think in his PhD thesis or something, is doing the work of formalizing it into, it's like it takes in the mass of the observable universe.
Yeah.
In
the
an
bucket
equation,
theory, basically.
The bucket theory, back to the spinning bucket.
Yeah.
But also the electromagnetic field, or what was the term you were using for the field?
The spirit?
No, around the planet.
The magnetosphere.
The magnetosphere. But the magnetosphere is also the realm of resonance between the Earth and the Sun, or between the planets. You know, there's like, the resonance isn't like the actual physical matter isn't really resonating. The resonance is happening in the invisible domain. And resonance generally, as far as sound and electromagnetics, you know, is happening in this invisible space between the objects.
Nodes are created out of the,
And then, And so I guess what's interesting about that too, though, is I guess it gets to, you know, are we physical, or are we matter, or are we spirit?
I think we're fields of energy is not just fields of energy. We're also the matter. We're dual beings is what I've come to realize. And until you can admit this and see yourself as a dual being, you can't begin to comprehend your place or your meaning.
Yeah, which reminds me of this idea that I think about every now and then, and I wrote a blog about it called the true 99%. You know, it's kind of riffing on this idea of, you know, in Occupy Wall Street, there was this idea of like the 99% are the poorest 99% and the rich 1%. It was like, and I was like, the true 99% is that the vast majority of people believe that we're more than the physical. But our identities, we identify with mostly physical things, you know? And it's odd that our number one identity, when we think about what we are, isn't the fact that we're spiritual beings with, you know, fields, you know? And I was about to say morphogenetic fields, which gets into other stuff that, you know, the metagaia idea that we're connected on through a morphogenetic field with
fields of form giving information.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that's even the next step. But even just the fact that we measure that we have electromagnetic fields around our bodies, and the heart math is doing work to show just how powerful the heart's field is.
Yep.
But our identities are still so constructed around, you know, physical things that really divide us. You know, it's our identity attachment to all these differences, physical differences between us, that actually winds up dividing us, or ideological differences, you know, where you could, like, even just the degree to which we have different religions, you know, is an attachment to these differences in the teachings over the ages, and forgetting the universal, the common essence that's always true. But it's that identity, the identifying with the physical part, and kind of like diminishing, or, you know, like, I don't know, not really ignoring, but just kind of, it's kind of irrelevant, the spiritual part maybe, or the invisible part, the field part.
I think it was a spectacular accomplishment.
What was?
To see ourselves as separate.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if you think about it, you know, it's like, I think for many years, it's like, if you study the history of art, for instance, you know, it's like it's like the Chinese, the Orientals, they don't even assign their art.
Mm.
It's like the idea of putting a name on something that they did.
Oh, right.
Doesn't even make sense to them, right? It's like the ego was kind of born in the West to a certain extent. I think before that, people lived in more of a connectedness. And before Copernicus, for instance, you know, I think there was, or you've heard of the bicameral mind idea, that that our brain was that we were being given information from a god, basically. And that we somehow separated ourselves from this connection that we innately had. It's like, now it's like we can't imagine the connection, but at one time we couldn't be separate. Mm-hmm. We were totally immersed in this identity with the universe and the solar system as a living organism. I think I imagine that was just, there was no other way of thinking of it.
And when you say the solar system is a living organism, I mean, I guess I'm imagining people looking, you know, we're discovering all sorts of different stone, you know, or even like prehistoric carvings or drawings on rocks that are obviously them tracking, you know, sun movements, seasonal sun movements, and then, you know, watching the planets, like, oh, those moving stars are doing a very different thing than all the other stars.
The wanderers, yeah.
As far as the site, but the background of that, or the context of that, is what I'm hearing. What you're saying is that we're all part of this living whole. Like we're members of this ecosystem, let's say. We're members of this whole, and then we're looking up and noticing these planets, and they're just part of this. Like, by extension, it's all one big living whole. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, I think, I have no proof of this.
Well, sure, no.
But yeah, I think that at one time people had what's termed Gnosis. Mm-hmm. They had silent knowledge. Mm-hmm. They didn't need, it's like, silent knowledge is like, maybe it's not the opposite of scientific knowledge, which is based upon mind and thinking and and being able to separate yourself from events that are happening outside of you. Mm-hmm. So you can, you know, that sort of mindset is very new. I think at one time everyone was deeply immersed in oneness, and that the idea of their body as being separate from anything that's surrounding them, including, the stars and everything else. I think that we can't comprehend that awareness because we've gotten so used to the idea of being separate. We have an ego now. We have, my name. I did this. I did this thing, and now it's separate from me. And it's, where is the connectedness of what motivated me? What actually created that thing? Did I do that? I don't know. It's like,
yeah, this need to take credit.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's new. It's
is that
new.
related to just kind of the monetization of everything and like the monetization of our time, and like we're all now on these, not all of us, but to a great degree, the more that we're engaged in the, economic, world, it's very much running on the hamster wheel to, earn the money to pay the bills, and that is a very individualistic process. Like we're very kind of set against each other to compete for a scarce resource, which is money, and it is artificial scarcity in a sense.
Total artificial, yeah.
And it kind of is creates it enhances or exaggerates the competition element in human relationship to get ahead. Is it related to that maybe, or?
Yeah, I think it's a useful stage that we're going through. I think it's a necessary stage to individuate. But I think that it also makes clear that our next step is to consciously be aware of what it means to be a dual being, to recognize that, okay, I am this thing that's separate, but I am also this everything. Because that is, and it's much more profound than just an acknowledgement that I'm everything. Like, okay, it's this recognition that everything is working through you, that it's using your body, the spirit, being if you're what we were saying earlier about I want to be a tool for spirit. Well, if your ego is such that you don't recognize the dual nature, it means that you're doing things not for spirit, not for the whole. You're doing things for you. And then it's because that dual being is the other thing that's really profound about it, is that it has to do with really significant things that are having an impact on our society today, including like gender, because the individual is male compared to the whole is female. But then there's an alternation of these gender and male and femaleness, and it's a complex thing to be able to recognize this and to be able to use it effectively.
And when you say male and female, like the individual's male and the collective is female, I'm translating it more into like yin and yang, or masculine and feminine, rather than male and female, which implies more of like a biological.
Well, that's gender.
Thing. Gender, yeah.
Gender is biological maleness and femaleness, whereas you can also have maleness and female, which has nothing to do with your gender. It's like it's a role that you're playing. It's like when you
or identity.
Yeah, it's like you can be masculine in relation to. It's like a woman can be masculine in relation to a man who is female, even if they're both heterosexual and one's a big burly dude, right?
Yeah,
but
it has more to do with how you're showing up, what characteristics
it's the relationship
you're expressing in the relationship. Yeah,
and you need to be able to be okay with that. You shouldn't be stuck on your gender as your role.
Right.
That is like defines you.
Right.
right? It's like we need to be able to be fluid
Mm-hmm.
and recognize when it's appropriate to, you know, it's like the swara, you know, it's like you've got, we have male and femaleness as part of our nature.
Mm-hmm.
Mind is masculine compared to feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling is feminine because feeling is accounts for the whole.
Mm-hmm.
When you get a feeling, that's entirely different from when you get a thought or an idea or something like this. Feelings, you can't, they're irrational.
Mm.
Now, you can use your mind to
Discern or
discern
decipher.
and make sense of that feeling slowly.
Find the origin of it, or
yeah, to work it out in a certain sense. You go back and forth, you know.
And there's this idea that there's a that there's an assertion, or there is a realm of thought, which is that belief is underlying emotion, that usually emotions show up as like an expression of an underlying belief, which is, but that maybe is a orthogonal.
Emotion is, I would think, different than feelings in a certain sense.
Okay.
You know, just an emotion is like anger is an emotion. A feeling is like this thing which is this, to me, it's like a bigger something. It's like something which I can't fully comprehend it. And I don't want to comprehend it.
The image that's coming to my mind is almost just like being in a boat on a lake or something, or being on the edge of a lake, and then feelings are like these like the wind is blowing and these ripples, these waves are coming towards you of this wind that's bringing these feelings
that's a much better
you. It's not
image.
really like a personal thing related to a belief or anything. It's more of, it's almost a resonance that's transcending the individual or connecting across scale.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I would think. Feelings, I think by definition a feeling is irrational. In other words, it's not something that you can put into words and say, this is what it is.
Definitely this, yeah. 1 + 1 = 2.
But it is something which you should be able to accept into your life and process it in such a way that it can guide your behavior. If you don't
response,
or your response or
responsibility, you know, the ability to respond, or
exactly,
adaptation, the ability to adapt to changing circumstances. Yeah.
So I think feelings are a vastly neglected area of knowledge for our society. We ignore feelings,
right?
You know.
Yeah, and I mean that brings up for me like remote viewing and like family constellation. Like the work of family constellation is very much about someone stepping in as a representative into someone else's family tree, and then feeling feelings that come up in that position or role, you know, of something that you have no knowledge of. But
it's silent knowledge.
Yeah.
It's like it's silent, and there's a knowledge associated with it. And when you try to express it using your left brain or your right side left brain, it slips through your fingers. It's its own thing.
Yeah.
It's a way of interacting with the world that should be given equal credence to thinking and rationalization.
And so you said your word for that is gnosis, right?
Gnosis, yeah. It's like a
Gnosis.
Gnosis, yeah.
And I mean that there's this idea of the Gnostics, right? The Gnostic gospel, is it? Or the Gnostic?
Yeah, there was a bunch of Gnostic sects.
In the Middle East, in kind of the area and around the time of Jesus and the Essenes.
Exactly.
And what's your, have you looked into like the Essenes and those Gnostic groups, and like what's your take or your view of all that?
Well, I think Jesus was a Gnostic. Now this is a very, people are going to get offended by this.
Oh, good. That's maybe we can get some views on the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Here we go. This should do it. So, but to me, a Gnostic is just someone who is in touch with spirit through their feelings, through silent knowledge.
Which to me, like I frame that back into my definition of true religion, being of service to spirit. It's just, that's it.
Yeah, there's
You're in touch with spirit. You're open to that experience. You're feeling the feelings that are coming up.
Gnosticism is, how could it be at all bad? I mean,
Yeah.
it's like to deny Christ being a Gnostic is like saying that he couldn't tie his shoes or something.
Right.
You know, it's like, what the
He
heck?
couldn't feel the feelings of
Right. I
the
mean, that's
invisible
ridiculous.
dimension.
You know?
Yeah, it is absurd.
Yeah. So,
But if that's your definition of Gnosticism, or what being a Gnostic
yeah, it's
is,
a very open definition. It's in other words, there's Gnostics had some really strange beliefs. You know, the historical Gnostics.
right. And I think that's where people's resistance to that, it's always the differences and the weirdnesses of all these different things. It's always the problem.
Right. It's like, but to be a Gnostic to me is just to say that I can be in touch with spirit on my own.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need help.
You don't need an intermediary, a priest or a
Yeah.
shaman or a whatever to like talk to God for you and then tell you what.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is not to say that it's nice to commune with other people who are sharing your pursuit.
Yeah. And it's also, I think, valuable to recognize when other people have devoted their lives to being in that state and really like going for it for their whole life. And then me, let's just say, as a regular person who's been in the rat race, being a wage slave, and then I'm kind of opening up, I just started meditating, or I just started to kind of break out of my box, my reality box. I think it's useful to recognize and to, have relation with other people who are quote unquote more advanced or more
Absolutely
versed in being. But as long as I think you don't lose that core idea that you expressed, that it's like, I can have this direct experience. Like one reason I love the film Kumare, which is a film, it's a mockumentary in a sense of a fake guru. There's this Indian.
What's the name of it again?
Kumare. He's an American Indian. He's East Indian, but he grew up in the U.S. and studied film and all this. Very Western American, but his grandparents are like traditional East Indian, and so he just saw this like yoga taking off as like a fad, and just like, wouldn't it be funny to like become a guru and just kind of make a satirical film about being a guru? And so he went to India and he got his picture taken with, all gurufied with like famous gurus. And then he came back and he was a guru, The film is hilarious. But what I love about it is all through it, his core message is, you are your own guru, Like, this is just a mask. What you see, Kumare, is just a mask, I mean, he's telling them in a sense, like,
he sounds like the real thing playing a game, actually.
Yeah, but also,
to a certain extent.
But also, it's kind of like that. To me, is the essence of it. Is the reminder. Yeah, sure. Even if he had spent his whole life being a guru, being guru-ish.
Yeah.
If you don't keep reminding people that it's about their own experience, it's about their own direct relationship with those feelings and with their own direct relationship with what is and with the divine, then that's where you cross the line into being whatever, a manipulator or a fraud or blah 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 blah, all the different variations.
Yeah.
But I just love it because that film it's so fun because it's satire on the one hand, but also has the true essence of what a real guru is, which is reminding you constantly that you are your own guru.
Yeah.
So Gnosticism as an ism, what is that? Is that thing where things start to take more of like a formalized ideology or something? Like, what does it mean to be a Gnostic? And is that different than Gnosticism?
I'm not a fan of isms.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, to me, but I consider myself to be a Gnostic,
Hmm.
just in the sense that I am a seeker of silent knowledge. And I read other people's, the fact is there's a lot of knowledge out there. I mean, it's, you can open yourself up. It's not like you get it all at one time. It goes on forever.
Hmm.
You can keep gaining more and more knowledge, and I want as much as I can get. I mean, that to me is why I'm here on this planet, is to gain knowledge.
Why?
Well, I've read this idea that the original intent of creation was to make the unknown known.
Mm.
Known is Gnosis. So, in other words, the original intent of creation is to make Gnosticism possible. To you're trying to make the unknown known.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can read books of what is already known,
Mm-hmm.
and you can get a lot of, but there's always something beyond that to
Mm-hmm.
know. And that to me is,
and
where
there's always plenty beyond that even the author of the book was limited. As you're writing a book, it's like you can only fit so much into the written form.
Right,
There's so much
exactly.
more that doesn't get expressed in the written words even.
Yeah, I mean, the Bible is a great book,
Mm-hmm.
but it's it's got a finite number of pages.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, for instance, I look at monad and metagaia in particular, and metagaia has to do with chakras, right? And you can find all sorts of books on chakras, where they tell you what they know about chakras. But I read those books and I don't agree with it, because it doesn't fit my silent knowledge of what a chakra is when I try to expose myself to open my mind to what is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's guided. Yeah, my meditations are guided by my mind to a certain extent. But where did the idea for chakras come from in the first place, right? Mm-hmm. It's like somehow somebody came to this idea that our organs in our body are somehow related to planets. Right? I mean, if you look at books on chakras, they all have a planet associated with the chakra. And they're an endocrine organ.
Have you researched this?
Oh, yeah. I bet you I've bought in my life 30 or 40 books on chakras.
And it's your opinion, from your perspective, the oldest source. I mean, chakra is like a Sanskrit word,
for
right?
wheel.
For
it means
wheel.
Wheel. Yeah.
And so are you saying in the oldest, I would assume it comes from the Vedic period, like the Vedas or that.
Thousands of years old.
And you're saying that even from that oldest source of the idea of chakra, there's a correlation with planets involved.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's a strange idea that this idea that there's this energetic wheel-like structure in the human body. Where would they make that up, right? Somehow, that to me is a Gnostic. It's a result of Gnostic knowledge. Now,
can I interrupt you too? It's totally, yeah. There's this amazing book by Ingo Swann, who certainly was a Gnostic and had...
Certainly was,
based on your definition of Gnostic. I mean, he was the founder of the remote viewing protocols and was a psychic.
Making the unknown known.
Making the unknown known. He wrote this book called Psychic Sexuality, in which it's all stemmed from this experience he had where he was doing research into, psychic abilities with a research group. And there was this really ancient source of information that you can develop clairvoyant abilities by using polished copper plates and then sitting in front of them, especially with a teacher and a student would sit together and just long enough to get the student up to the point where to activate, but somehow sitting in meditation in front of these copper plates, it's a way to develop your clairvoyant powers. And so he had been doing these experiments with this research group of sitting in this box with copper walls all around him with all these like
idea, yeah.
heart monitors and whatever brain monitors. And he said like through that time period, which I don't remember if it was a week or two, he became so ridiculously clairvoyant that he was seeing these massive energy plumes around people, especially when they were horny or active in, like he was saying in some cases, men just walking down the street would have these energy plumes that were
part of
like
their aura,
multiple stories high. He would, and then these stories of like, but in his clairvoyant perception, he was seeing these rotating balls of energy in people's, which he called chakras.
Yep.
So I would, like, to me, not having had that experience myself, but to me, that's an example of what you're talking about, of the origin of these ideas comes from Gnosis or from direct experience of it. And to me, that's a written version of someone saying like, whoa, I did this thing and it enhanced my clairvoyant powers and I saw chakras.
Yeah, but what he's also telling you is that you could do the same thing if you were to put, get in a box, have these plates.
Sure.
You try it out yourself and see what happens, right?
Too, in the sense of like he said nothing about planets, right? So I bring this up because theoretically anybody who's clairvoyant, who might, not anybody, there's this idea that someone might be clairvoyant in a way of being able to directly perceive these energy vortexes in people. And that is kind of a self-existing thing in the sense of, I think it's another step to then make the connection that it's a morphogenetic, connection with a particular planet.
Yep.
But it theoretically is possible to just have a direct perception of that, aside from any.
Yeah, I think people at one time knew this.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the chakra teachings that have been handed down to us I think that they're, well, I guess the word is twisted a little bit. Because if you read, it's like the assignment of the planets to the chakras now make no sense to me whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you see they're emotional, not feeling, they're emotional assignments. It's like I've seen the heart chakra assigned to the sun because it's the source of, whatever.
The most powerful
or Venus
field.
Because it's associated with love.
Mm-hmm.
Or
feminine,
or whatever. It's like
Yeah.
they make something up because it sounds good.
Right. It's just kind of, go ahead.
But I think originally there was direct,
Gnosis.
silent
knowledge
where they identified with the solar system, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow they tried to then see themselves at the same time. And that, it's the chakras, as it's like I say that the heart chakra is the heart chakra is equivalent to the heart, lungs, and digestive system.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I haven't seen that, right? I haven't, that's not.
You didn't directly clairvoyantly perceive that in someone.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that.
Well, let's get some copper plates. Shall we state an intention to get some copper plates?
I like copper plates. Yeah, let's. We could. You want to try this?
There's
seriously?
a place in Sacramento, a supply place that I've looked up in the past, and I've been intending of buying them. And
I had a whole set of copper plates at one time.
How big?
I don't know.
Oh, I'm talking about like 3 feet by 4 feet.
Really?
Yeah. To like meditate.
If you want to do it, yeah.
All right.
There's
another person in town who's interested too, and I told them that I would let them know when I.
Well, we were going to turn this whole house into an experimental.
Well, that was an idea that was floated. I don't think it got to the point of.
You're not ready to state the intent to do that yet?
Turn this. The theoretical idea was turning my house into like a
spiritual,
resonance center.
Yeah.
Center of resonance research, healing,
Thomas, I think that's
development,
such a
R&D, resonance
fucking
and
awesome
development,
idea, man.
resonance and design,
Wow.
R&D.
So yeah, I think, but this is where it's like,
So anyway, that was on the realm of we actually potentially can develop our clairvoyant abilities too.
yeah,
And that to me is exciting because that is an example of actually doing Gnosis. And then you can, if you, anything that you then share, you're then sharing from your own personal experience. It's not just like a hypothetical, you know, um, left brain, right side kind of deduction based on stuff I've read and stuff I've thought about. It's firsthand experience at that point.
yeah. I mean, Gnosis. I guess when I say that I haven't gnostically seen the chakras the way that I have them outlined in Metagaya, uh, that is true.
Sure.
But at the same time, I guess there's like this. I'm trying to achieve what I would say a balance of mind and feeling, and feeling to me is it's the awareness that comes from identifying with the whole. So the whole that I'm identifying with is the solar system. So by consciously identifying with that whole, then you put yourself in a position where you can like extend out. How does this feel when I arrange it in this manner?
Yeah, right.
Right. So
True.
it's not Gnosis in the sense that I'm just sitting there like a total blank slate,
Sure. You
waiting for a bolt of something to enter my mind.
Sure.
It's like a guided Gnosis.
Right.
And I don't know if does that qualify? I don't know.
I think that qualifies. That's valid. That's like me doing an intuitive test of writing down different things on pieces of paper and then crumpling them up, mixing them up and feeling what each one feels like without consciously knowing. And then even when you open them up, feeling what each one feels like as soon as you realize.
Set it up, but you're still using feeling
right
to determine, the validity of something.
Yeah,
So,
I think there's a lot of validity to that approach. Because you like what I hear you saying is you might be exploring like what if there's a correlation between chakras and planets, and if so, then what about this correlation between this organ and this chakra and this planet? And then if you change around the order, it might feel different depending on which order. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's, used in that way, your feelings are a tool. And it's like,
there's a synergy then between left brain mind logic and right brain feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
They're working together in a sense.
And that to me is that's how you make progress in science or religion. I think is that you have to recognize that we're a dual being, and if you don't recognize that, you're like walking around on one leg. You're going to go in circles. You're not going to get anywhere. It's like you need two wings to fly, and those two wings are mind and feelings. How do they balance? You're using one and then the other, and you should be able to use them both, or you're in trouble.
Yeah, and that also I like that metaphor because that also reminds me of something Abdul Baha said about men and women in humanity, speaking to gender equality and the importance and the need for gender equality, because man and woman are like two wings of a bird. They both need to be strong and work together in order for the bird of humanity to fly to its highest potential.
Yeah.
And that we're being hobbled because of,
It's like gender.
male or gender bias and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I think women are naturally better at feelings, interpreting their feelings.
Yeah, for sure. I think that could be claimed to be empirical.
Yeah, I think if you don't believe that, you're
right.
I think you're in real trouble in your relationship.
What closet are you in?
Men are trying to explain things. We're trying to fix things. They say, I feel like you're not paying any attention to me. And you go, well, wait a minute. No, I gave you this time here. It's like we've got it all worked out, but they're feeling.
Yeah.
What we should do is we should say, well, let's explore that feeling.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we're capable of feeling also, so let's explore that feeling.
Right.
And get into it, and then we can, once we can identify where that feeling is coming from, then we can maybe try to
apply some logic,
apply some mind,
yeah,
and work back and forth. But if you don't admit that feelings are important, if you can't use them yourself on a regular basis, I don't know how you can expect to have a relationship with a woman.
That's why humanity, it's a major reason why we're as messed up as we are.
Right.
Yeah.
This is why I'm an expert on men and women
why
relationships.
You've been single for how long?
Well, that's hold on. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, Gnosis.
No, you're getting ready for the big one.
Yeah.
Gnosis. Let's feel for a minute.
Let's wind our way back to Resonance Radio.
Resonance Radio. All right.
Yeah.
Resonance Radio. So this is Resonance Radio right now.
This is it, man. We're resonating.
Welcome any listeners who might be, or viewers who might be tuning into this. This is being recorded May 30th, 4 p.m., 2025.
And I think, in light of what we were just saying, I think that the feeling of Resonance Radio will come from the rest of the house.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we are
having this actual location be fully 100% dedicated to this broader umbrella idea of what resonance.org could represent, or could be the kind of the visible portal into that people all around the world could tune in to, or that it could be the central nexus point as source for
like a giant vibrating crystal, man, just perfectly clear and But yeah, I love that idea of turning this house, or any house for that matter.
Sure.
But if you're willing to volunteer, I think that's a great thing, and just having like a place where you invite people to come in and communicate their truth, their their gnosis, and then you work it out, back and forth, trying to do that. But you need to, from the moment they step in the door, you set it up. It's like it's the bucket again. It's like in my writings. Whenever I get that bucket idea, I always just write bucket in the corner, in the margin, because that's what I'm looking for, is this connection to the all. To me, is just one of the most fascinating things ever. That it is like a requirement in physics. Certainly, it is in quantum physics. It seems right, but also it seems like Mach and all those guys are saying that it's just the way it is. I think about the forces. This is another thing that has just been driving me crazy recently. Is this idea of unifying the forces of nature. But gravity is not a force. Right? It's like gravity is a distortion of the architecture of space in a certain sense, or space-time anyway, right? Maybe it's not just space. Maybe it's a distortion of the architecture of space-time. So I don't know.
Gravity is a shadow.
Gravity is a shadow.
Well, I just love this idea of, on the one, you can state it as gravity is a push, but I think of it as more that gravity is the result of, this idea that there is energy, 0 point field This idea that there is this massive field of waves of all frequencies going in all directions, and it's kind of like we're kind of familiar with this idea of being deep underwater. There's pressure coming from all sides, except I think for this idea to work, these waves would need to be passing through matter. So this also gets into this interesting realm of like E.T. Whittaker wrote a paper back around the same time of Einstein's original 1906, I think, exploring this idea of what if the vector potential, or what we can measure in electric fields or whatever, is actually like interference pattern or resonance of superluminal waves. So like there's this idea of you can take two sound frequencies and play them together, and then some lower frequency comes out of that.
Oh yeah.
Which is the resonating interference or combination of higher frequency. So what if there are these like superluminal waves interacting with each other and then creating this lower dimensional wave, or slower wave, and what if the speed of light is actually the slower interference pattern of some higher superluminal wave, but that these waves pass through matter basically for the most part, but they do interact. There's like some interaction, some effect, such that if you then imagine like matter maybe is standing waves or some kind of coagulation of energy resonance coming, interference pattern from all directions. If there's two clumps of matter that are kind of close to each other, they might be shadowing each other from the pressure coming from all sides.
Is pressure a force?
Yeah. Force of this sea of superluminal, or the 0 point field, that's the waves of all frequencies moving in all directions. But if there's two clumps of matter that are close together, there's going to be less of the waves coming from this direction that make it through this side, but in both directions, so that they basically, there's pressure, but because these are close together, there's going to be less pressure between them, which is going to cause them to get pushed together. And so gravity isn't so much something like pulling them, it's more just the absence of this 360-degree pressure coming from all sides that's pushing them together. So that means like gravity's not a force, it's actually like the absence of force. It's the absence of, or a relative diminishing of this all frequencies waves crashing against the matter from all sides that then pushes these things together.
But it's like a force requires a transmitter, right? It's like the electron is the transmitter of electromagnetic force.
Yeah.
You're talking about gravity? Would it have a transmitter?
So gravity would be the absence of the transmitter. The transmitter would be the 0 point energy that we know is there, like this idea that there's more energy in a cubic centimeter than all the known matter of the universe, that kind of idea. Whether that's the exact, but like there's, to some degree, we know that there's this like all of what we know, what we measure as matter is almost like a ghost in this field of just massive amount of energy in every point of space. And it's kind of like these two different worlds. We've got the observable universe, and then we have this like, oh, whoa, there's all this energy that's just pulsing of all wavelengths and all, like you put those two together and what's the relationship there? To me, it's that there's got to be some interaction, and like the Casimir effect is an example of one of these kind of mysterious forces,
lack of force,
which is you have two charged plates, and the closer you bring them together, then suddenly there's like this pull. There's this something that's pulling them together.
Right. It's not gravity.
But what if it's a push? What if it's because we're
from the outside. Yeah.
everything is constantly being pushed from all sides. It's just when it's here, there's enough space there for the push to be basically, make it so that the shadowing effect isn't measurable. But it's when they're close enough here, and the charged plates, I would imagine, somehow like causes the waves to somehow interact with the charged plate enough that it blocks it enough of its polarity. It blocks enough of the charge, or enough of the waves that are positive, so to speak. And this one is blocking enough of the waves that are negative, so that it causes there to be this shading and this absence of forces, pushing it together. Anyway, I love the general idea. Obviously, I don't have any firsthand measurements or anything to go with it, but just trying to think, just spending a lot of time reflecting on, like, what is going on in the universe? What is gravity? This, to me, just in the sense of gnosis, or feeling, like what feels real about it. This, to me, feels more valid or more real to me than any of the other theories seem more mathematical and more like theory based. And this, on just a level of just feeling, there's something true that feels true there.
Yeah. Well, gravity as an attractive force has always had issues, right?
Right.
Yeah. And even the idea of gravity as a geometry of space-time is, I mean, it is, I mean, that's relativity, right? I mean, all of general relativity. But still, it needs, something is moving. Some like that push. Something is, there's a dynamism going on within space that you have to account for somehow.
Yep.
Or you're not, so just the idea that it's an architecture or space-time distortion is not, it doesn't seem like it's enough.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, yeah, okay. It does suggest that there is, I mean, there's obviously, some kind of architecture, some kind of something, interaction happening there, obviously. But, like, what exactly is it? Like, we haven't quite gotten to the point of, like, sure, we can measure it and we can kind of have a model of, like, gravity is this rate of acceleration over time, but those are like mental models that we use to almost like observe the change over time, like using calculus thinking to kind of understand the dynamics or understand how it changes over time or what its rate of change is. But it's not really getting at like a fundamental explanation of what it is. But at the same time, like Carver Mead says, we understand to a great degree like how electric charge behaves in relation, like positive charges and negative charges, and how they flow through circuits. And he did a lot of work on understanding how, currents move in superconducting coils and that kind of thing. And he kind of derived the fundamental equation of current and, electromagnetics from directly observing current in a superconducting ring. But he still says, like, so we have a lot of understanding about how it works, how it interacts, but we still don't really know what an electric charge is. It's one of these mysteries that we have yet to really answer.
Yep.
And to me, what feels right is that, a charge is like a interference pattern of some higher order of waves or fields on a higher order. It's an interference pattern between different waves, and maybe superluminal waves. And especially now with the research uncovering entanglement, we're now discovering this layer of reality that's far more simultaneous or instantaneous than our understanding of the speed of light or electromagnetics. There's some other layer of reality that's, as far as we can tell, massively more simultaneous and instantaneous, which to me suggests that there's some other order of reality. And if waves, it's like waves all the way down, so it's probably waves all the way up too. Like that to me suggests that higher order structure of reality is described by waves also. Just like we know that electromagnetic waves, gravity, the Unzingers focus on the deducing the big G constant as being the relationship with, or the interaction with, the mass of the observable universe. This higher order structure to me suggests that we're discovering there's something faster than the speed of light. This entanglement is by definition faster than the speed of light. What if it is? Anyway.
Yep.
Petering out into my
we're
lack of literacy. The bumping up against the mystery. But I guess I feel like there's enough there. To me, there's enough concentration or inception of thought, or what's the word when you add chemical, like you have something that's dissolved in a solution and then it precipitate. There's enough precipitation of thought there that to me feels like more in the right direction, right? And it also reminds me of someone from somewhere, I don't remember where I got it, but talking about the double slit experiment and, light being both particle and wave.
Yeah. And
they said it's like another example is like ocean waves. You've got whitecaps that are like, riding on this wave. And what, the metaphor is like the whitecaps are like the particle nature of the ocean, and the wave is the wave part of it. And then if those waves hit an ocean wall that has two openings, the whitecaps will disappear and reappear on the other side in a pattern that matches the double slit experiment, where the particles are like, having a wave-like behavior that don't just fit within the two slits. They show up in this other pattern. Like those whitecaps will reappear on the other side of the wall, behind the wall. And because you've got these waves that are interacting, it's like an interference pattern between these two waves. The wave that makes it through the two slits continues to interact, and the whitecaps show back up where you've got peaks in the wave interference pattern. Just like if you take two different sine waves and run them over each other, you've got peaks and valleys.
Yeah.
Anyway. And so this idea that it's the particles are where the interference patterns are like manifesting into like a level where there's enough energy for there to be this other thing going on, or a standing wave or something. Anyway. It's fun to think about this stuff. But anyway, that feels there's some Gnosis element of all this to me. But that's not enough though. Like science, the scientific status quo doesn't accept that as sufficient. You have to somehow prove it for it to be valid.
Well, yeah, that'd be nice. But I'm not sure. Like I was saying about feelings, I think certain things can't be put into words or even mathematical formula. It's like you can hint at it, like that G, the big G that Unzinger's talking about. But they're talking about the observable universe.
Right.
Well, that's not the universe,
Right.
right?
Or all of the universe. Yeah.
That's not all the universe, and we know that. We know
Right.
that there's something beyond the observable universe,
Uh-huh.
or we think we know it anyway. I don't know. Maybe we don't, but don't we?
No, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So
Well, those of us who have Gnosis, or who have feelings and allow and are open to the feeling of what is there that's more than what is observable.
yeah, I mean this.
But that also is related to this idea that we are more than the physical in our body. Like there's a correlation there. Like the universe is more than just the visible universe. Direct correlation with we are more than the physical, right?
Right. Yeah. Just. I mean. I've been reading books which say that we're not the body, we are a field of energy. And I try to think, okay, well,
Which books are these?
the Toltec books.
Okay.
Yeah. And
And the author or the main author or one of them?
yeah, it's Teilhard Merez is the guy's name.
Okay. Go on.
And just I try to make sense of what does that mean?
Can you state it again?
Well, that we are a dual being,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's the body, this thing that seems separate,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's this field of energy,
Mm.
and we're both of those things.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, we're not this body existing within a field of energy.
Mm-hmm.
The field of energy and the body, we are both of those at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
We're a dual being. This is the thing that I think is the most I have the hardest time wrapping my mind around this, because you can't wrap your mind around it.
Because the mind is inherently just logical.
Yeah, the mind is that
reductive
thing that works with the body.
Yeah.
That is trying to make sense of this other part of you, which is this field of energy, this resonating something. And
there's something that is in constant resonance with all that is.
Exactly, right? And that is you. That is me. And yet, I mean, you have to, I mean, I guess it's just that you have to admit mystery into your life and identify with it, and be okay with not being able to express it in a certain sense, not being able to contain it. Because how can you contain the infinite? You can't. And that's what it is. It's like a field of energy, in other words, is something which extends beyond your body. We don't know where it ends. Probably not at the observable universe. So we are vast beyond our possibility of understanding. And it's like Gnosis is useful. Feelings are useful, but we will never be able to. It's like, this is why I think it's so hard to move into the unknown, and yet that's what I want. I want to move into the unknown, but I'm afraid of it. It's a fearful thing to move into the unknown. And the known is the body. We've got this body, but I want to be able to move and live and breathe in that also, that other part of me. And I think that requires a very different mindset, a feeling set, or I don't know what it is. I know that you have to be...
Set of copper plates, a copper plate set.
You have to be very, very comfortable with the unknowable and the unknown.
Yeah, the mystery. You have
mystery
to be okay
of it,
with the mystery.
that
there is always going to be a mystery beyond anything that you can
And you're
know.
smack in the middle of it. It's you.
And you are also, there's a mysterious aspect of yourself.
And I know that sounds, maybe it's like you're just trying to write off, then you can say anything and it just sounds like, well, that's part
Which
of
kind of justifies not trying to prove it in the kind of scientific materialist
exactly
domain.
It
but
sounds
also
kind of hippie-ish, you know. It's like,
yeah,
oh, it's just, you know, I got this.
and religious. I mean, it reminds me of this wonderful quote of Ali, who was one of um, the imams of Shia. You know, he was somehow in that lineage from Muhammad, and the quote is something like, "Dost thou reckon thyself only a puny thing, or
Right.
only a puny form, when within thee the whole universe is folded?"
Yeah, that's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Holy Toledo.
Yeah, I love that line. Classic.
Yeah, that's a great line.
Good one, Ali.
Who is that?
Ali, he was one of the, he was in that lineage. You know, Muhammad, there's the split that happened in Islam right after Muhammad died between, you know, he said, after I go, I leave you my book and my family.
Yeah.
And so the split happened because in Shia, they honor like his, like the lineage of the leadership went to like his nephew or something. But then the Sunnis followed, like there was some very charismatic, popular guys in the community who thought that it should be, they should be elected. We're like, we should elect the leaders or something to that. I'm very, unfortunately, you know, sadly, almost completely ignorant of the details, but that's my very
Yeah.
very minimal knowledge of the split. But so in the Shia tradition, then there was this lineage of 12 imams. I think they're imams is the name. That, and eventually in the 12th imam disappeared. And so that's where in the Shia tradition there was kind of this you know, this idea that when the 12th imam returns, that would be the Mahdi, or the promised one. And so when the Bab, in Baha'i history, when the Bab appeared in 1844, he claimed to be the 12th, the return of the 12th Imam, you know, the promised one, and that he fulfilled, you know, and it was, there are various, I don't know them specifically, but there was this idea of there being 1260 years until the promised one would show up. And so the Bab's declaration happened and that's lunar years, because in, you know, Islam it was a lunar calendar.
Oh, right.
And so it's a different set of years if you go by solar years. But in the lunar years, he made his declaration exactly 1260 years.
A lunar year is exactly 12 lunar months, right?
Right. So
whereas it's actually in our years
year.
it's 12.5, approximately 12.5 lunar months per seasonal year.
And so if you go over centuries, you're going to have more lunar years in the same time period as solar years. So anyway, how did I get off?
They have a beautiful calendar. We need to make their calendar, the Islamic calendar. I want to see that someday.
Yeah, in Earth clock and or monad.
Yeah, either one would be nice.
Probably be easier to do it in Earth clock at this point. But at some point, we should have multiple calendars in both.
Yeah, but especially that the lunar calendar, to me, is the spiral nature of it, where it's like it's constantly spiraling, to me is so beautiful. I just love that idea, because that's like the unknown right there. It's like because you're spiraling into every new year starts on a new date. This is why they don't have birthdays, right? Because the day that they were born on is,
well, they do have birthdays, but they're different time of the solar year. They have,
well, yeah, but that's a weird birthday, you know. It's like when you're,
I'm just saying, in the Islam, I mean, there are birthdays. It's always the same date in the lunar calendar.
Is it?
Yeah. Like, because they have months, like, and the months begin, it's basically, what is it, like the first moon, I forget the definition, but it's a calendar with the beginning of the calendar every year. So you can have a birthday that's on the third moon, on the whatever day of the third moon.
Right.
And there's a name for that.
Yeah.
And so you have a birthday with like a set time. So every year you can.
It's going to rotate through the seasons, right?
Sure. Through the seasons.
That's not a birthday. It's like, I mean, it's not a birthday the way that I think of a birthday is, I guess what I'm saying. Yeah. I mean, it's a birthday.
Because for you, when you say that, I'm imagining just the degree to which I know your perspective. Like, there's a very strong importance of the day of the seasonal year that you're born.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
the Western zodiac is a seasonal
traditional
zodiac.
astrology is your sun sign, right? It's like you were born in this particular sun sign, which is Western astrology. Yeah, so yeah, it's just a very strange thing. That's why I am
Yeah.
fascinated with it, because it is so strange.
Yeah.
And I just imagine the mindset of someone following that calendar is going to be very different than our modern mindset.
Yeah.
You know.
And when you were talking about the spiraling,
Yeah.
I had an image of the whirling dervishes.
Yeah, I know, right?
Spinning,
It's
you know.
kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. Yeah. You want to talk about one more thing?
You got something to talk about?
Well, yeah, I guess it's like this the dual being that we one aspect of that we haven't talked about much anyway is the dualness of waking versus sleeping, which is, you know, it's like the solar day has night and day, and the you know there's this idea that we have two bodies. You've got a waking body, which is we're having a conversation right now with our waking bodies, but you also have what's called a dream body, and that dream body is the body which is the body which is in touch with everything. It's a waveform body as opposed to the particle body. So it extends out to, you know, where does it end? Where does it stop? You know, it's like, and I've often wondered about, for instance, the pyramids, or these strange rocks which are carved with, you know, you can't, you know, they've got the weird corners and just all of this. There's a lot of strange structures on this planet that when you start to consider them all, they don't make sense, right? How did they get there? Who made these things? Because we can't do a lot of this stuff with our current technology, right? The pyramids, you know, I mean, these rocks that are multiple tons lifted up, we couldn't build a pyramid now. And so I wonder, one possibility that has always been in my mind is that those structures were constructed with the dream body. In a dream. You can fly in a dream, right? You've flown in a dream? Have you ever flown in a dream?
It's been a long time.
I mean, yeah, it's been a long time for me, but I remember vividly flying in dreams, you know. And that when you're in a dream and you're flying, there's no doubt that you're flying, and you're flying in your body.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's happening. It doesn't matter that the laws of physics don't allow you to do that. You're doing it. And I know that certain societies even now there's this, apparently in, I guess it's South America, there's called the Senoi, Senoi or something like this. There's a book called the Senoi Dreamworkers Handbook, where apparently a whole society of people dream together. Carlos Castaneda, his whole, you know, he was taught by two different Nahals. One was his dream teacher and the other was his waking teacher. And then after all of that information, he had to integrate those two sides of his memory together. And it's just I guess I'm just bringing this up because it's another avenue to study and try to understand our dual nature, which to me is at the heart of the most. It's like when monad, you know, is this idea that the solar system is a living organism and it has photosynthetic biorhythms equivalent to us. So you got the solar day is equivalent to the heartbeat, the lunar month is equivalent to the breath, and the seasons is equivalent to this thing called the swara, the left and right. And this is the one thing that's missing in our society. We have no regard for this dual nature, and I think that it's at the heart of all of our problems in a certain sense.
Right. And like we were talking earlier about gender, and I was saying the kind of the gender bias and prejudice and disparity is a significant problem in humanity. But what like the interesting correlate or connection with the Swara is this idea that we're both, and we're kind of constantly shifting between primarily the masculine and feminine multiple times a day.
Yep.
And that by recognizing that and honoring that would naturally harmonize our relationship in our more biological gender relationships.
Yeah, and it's like, do you remember your dreams?
Sometimes, vaguely.
Sometimes, but it would be a whole different life if you did remember your dreams, I would imagine, right? I don't remember my dreams that much either. But I can imagine that. I mean, the Carlos Castaneda books are remarkable for they encourage Carlos Castaneda to become aware of his dream body, so that he is comfortable in his dream body as he is in his regular body. He is able to make use of both bodies.
Wow.
And
that's cool. I like that.
That strikes me as like, that's what I want. You know, I think that is because it indicates that you have developed a relationship with the other. It's like, it's easy to think that you're this body, but most of us don't even have any regard or care for that body, which interacts with waveform awareness, dreams. It's a whole different thing, and it's a fascinating blank slate that's out there.
Yeah, what an opportunity! What a massive opportunity for personal development. You know, if you put it into the individualist.
Right,
thing,
here we are.
Ambition to be all that, the best that you can be. There's this vast
a frontier
realm,
man.
A frontier, yeah.
A frontier. It's like people are thinking, here we are, people are content to sit around and watch fucking television, It's like this is worthy of our lives. When here's a whole frontier of the unknown to explore.
Well, so what this brings up to me is that there have been mystery schools throughout the ages that have developed, that have formalized, training process to develop these abilities.
Absolutely.
I had the good fortune of visiting a friend who's, who enabled me to see or to read some of the 12th degree of the Rosicrucian training materials, and it's all about this stuff. It's like, these practices for like doing past life experiences and, I don't remember all the details, but there's schools of like, when I was in Guatemala at Lake Atitlan, there's Los Pyramides is a school that's all about astral travel, out of body travel, and they have a whole bunch of different practices and stuff to develop that, and like a whole school all about that. So it seems like there are a lot of different, but they've had to be kind of secret, it seems like, historically, right? Like the Rosicrucian, like the secret teachings, so to speak, have been secret, and I don't know what the inner training teachings of Masonry is, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some element of developing the Gnosis, experiences and the dream body and that kind of a thing, or some variation of that.
Well, the Toltec teachings by Marez, he's stating for the first time that the Toltec teachings are being released in a book form for the first time ever. It's been handed down orally from teacher to student.
Wow.
For untold generations. And the same thing with Carlos Castaneda. Carlos Castaneda was the end of his lineage of, Don Juan was the last person to construct a group.
Mm-hmm.
Before, that's how the teaching was maintained. Once one group was formed, their next task was to create the next group.
Mm-hmm.
And then and there's 4 men with their 8 men actually and 8 women. So you have a 16 group class basically.
Mm-hmm.
16 or more, but at least 16.
Okay.
And east, west, north, and south, they're all related to particular types.
Mm-hmm.
But for the first time ever, it's like Carlos Castaneda and Don Juan expressed he didn't understand this. It's like, but for whatever reason, that teaching was, he found a student who happened to be Carlos Castaneda, who was a anthropologist, who took meticulous notes
Mm-hmm.
and constructed the teaching.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote it down for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And that seemed to be because that's what Spirit sought out someone like him to write it down.
Mm-hmm.
And then it got released. So I feel like Monad also has this, the swara is inherent, like I said, it's inherent in one of the biorhythms of the solar system.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the teaching. It's like, I feel like that's I need to work this out. I don't claim to be an expert on this, but it seems like that's what's needed by our society at this point, is this recognition of the dual nature and how we might be able to work with it. And, because, here we're living on this planet and we've got all this conflict between black and white, and man and woman, and can't go on like that forever, Can it? I don't know. It doesn't seem like it.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like here's something to do besides tearing up the planet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like it. The dream body. And I mean, there's also there's that way of thinking of it, like we're dual nature, dual body.
Yep.
But there's also there's also the way of trying to see it as just two aspects of the same thing. It's like when you were talking about before we started podcasting, the idea of the planet being the result of the field, like the energy field, or it's similar to this idea of like we are this energy field or this energy. I forget what you said. The exact phrase.
Energy, the magnetosphere.
No, well, on an individual level, we are this energy body.
We're energy fields.
Energy fields.
Yeah.
And then we're also this physical. It's a twofold nature. And so similar, the planet has that. And I wonder, and so where my mind went was correlating that with this, gravity is a push idea, but it's more like the shadow of the push, or it's the absence of the push that only kind of really shows up when you have two bodies, or it's easiest to see it when you've got two bodies close together. But to what degree are the magnetosphere, or these fields around the planet, and especially the degree to which they're interacting with the sun, to what degree are those like interference patterns or ripples of the waves coming from all directions interacting with the sun and interacting with the earth? And these fields are like it's kind of like a boat moving through water. There are these ripples out into space. To what degree are these fields like the interference, the ripples of the interference patterns of these waves or these fields, running into or interacting with the planets in all directions? Or maybe, iron or like charge, the fact that some planets have a perceptible field and some don't, maybe is the degree to which the core has a structure that causes there to be fields that form because of the interaction of these fields with the substances or particles inside of the planet. Fun stuff.
Yeah, they're. I mean, they're obviously. I mean, you. It's. I guess it's impossible to totally separate them in
Mm.
the particle versus the field.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so the idea that we're dual bodies, but you shouldn't want to separate them to the point that they're like totally divided,
Two
because
separate
then
things. Yeah.
that's trying to stay separate again. You know,
Right.
it's like a.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But it does, like, something interesting it does bring up though is the experience of astral travel or out of body experiences, experience that people have reported. I have not personally experienced it, but of really being able to like move outside of the body, see their body, move around, in this dream body. It seems like it's very similar to the dream body,
You haven't experienced it, or you haven't remembered it.
or I haven't remembered it maybe.
Yep.
And if it is the same as, like, I certainly have experienced being all sorts of places and moving around and interacting in dream space.
Yeah.
So if they are the same thing, then certainly I have, but in a way, the stories that I hear are much more like, oh, I had the experience of falling out of my bed, and my little crystal that's on my bedstand fell with me. But then I picked up my crystal. I had my crystal in my hand. But then I looked over and I saw my body and my crystal on my, bedstand. So she was like remarking this was her first experience, and she was in the school, the out of body training school.
Yeah, that sounds typical,
And
actually.
she's like, oh wow, I realized that you can bring certain, especially certain crystals have this nature too. They're existing in both places or whatever.
Yep.
But like, are you only able to do that if you have a body? It's like, is there? And this also reminds me of remote viewing. Like, if you're remote viewing, you're there, so to speak, but you're also here in your body, and it's like, to me, it's like, to what degree is this possible? Because it's where, like, there is this other layer of reality that is much more instantaneous in a sense, and we're able to travel, but it's some kind of, we're still somehow linked to the body in a sense. We're not necessarily completely leaving the body, but it's almost like the body is like the home base, and somehow we're projecting some version of this identity that we've formed from having a body, or from being a body, and we're able to project it out into space, but it's still dependent, or somehow just a projection from this physical form. And if we, like, is there still an I, that can just exist purely as an energy body,
Yeah, right.
without
that's
the physical
question,
body?
Right?
I mean, this gets into the meaning of life, or not the meaning of life, but is there an I after the physical death? The afterlife idea.
I think, was it Paramahamsa Yogananda, his book, Autobiography of a Yogi. I think he talks about his teacher,
Yukteswar, or
Yukteswara.
Yukteswar. Yeah.
When somebody showed up in his room,
Oh yeah.
I think, and just manifested in front of him. And I mean, I've heard this in other places also. I mean, it hadn't happened to me, so I can't. I can't say that I believe it entirely, but I do believe it actually pretty close to entirely. It's like I think that we are an energy pattern, and that it's like, you can have a dream of someone who's been dead, right? You ever had a dream of someone who was dead before?
Not that I can remember.
Now, if you did have a dream of someone who was dead, that doesn't mean that the body that you dreamed was actually that person,
Sure.
right? It could be, something else, I guess, right?
Yeah.
But I guess the idea of a dream state makes a lot of things that are impossible in normal, quotes, normal reality believable. To
Mm-hmm.
me anyway. It's if I can fly in a dream, that
Mm-hmm.
changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would say. It's like I have to seriously consider the fact that somehow my mind is contributing to the gravity that's holding me to this ground.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know that's a lot of scientists are going to say, well, those guys are out of there.
Mm.
To gravity for most people, I guess gravity is just it exists at all places and all times, and there's no getting around that. But where is a dream state where you can fly?
Mm-hmm.
That's part of a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
As much as you want to discount that and throw that out as being just,
Mm-hmm.
okay, a dream state is just a hallucination.
Mm-hmm.
That's another way of, discounting.
Yeah.
But it's not a hallucination when you're doing it.
Yeah. I mean, this also brings up going one step further with this idea of biolocation, teleportation, just being able to, which when I was in Colombia, I spent a night at the house of one of the mamos that had been on the trek to the Lost City that I went on with my friends, Elon and a bunch of musicians. And there were a few mamos that went with us. And I was up, having a conversation with him and some of his family members, and they kind of got into the whole, being negative, criticizing our technology, phones, and all this stuff, and being very extractive of the mining is very devastating to nature, and I kind of was pushing back a little bit and saying like, okay, but does that mean like we don't have phones, we don't have planes, we don't have boats, like we don't get to travel then, like we don't get to communicate? Like, are you saying that you have an alternative? Do you have a methodology or ability that can be taught of telepathy and teleportation? Because like, if so, then great. Like, let's remember that. And he was like really curious, because I said like, I have had an experience of telepathy once, but I've never had an experience of teleportation, And he was like really curious about me saying that I'd had a telepathy experience, but he didn't answer me about him or them having a knowledge of that. But what he did say is that one of their elders, who has since passed, had the ability to teleport.
Yep.
And that he had the ability to just like spin around and he'd be gone and he'd be somewhere else. But that when he passed, that knowledge went with him. Like the younger generations had not, learned or gotten to the level of whatever it takes to be on that level. No one had learned that from him. But that to me suggests that is possible, and that there's this overlap between these abilities that we have in the dream state and the quote unquote real state. This overlap between the physical and the energy.
Yep.
To the extent that it's theoretically possible, and to some degree there are stories of people having these abilities that seem like to only exist in superhero movies,
Or in dreams.
Right?
Yep.
And it's interesting to me that I can't remember flying in any time recently, that in my dreams I often have kind of the same kind of limited powers that I do in the waking life. And is that the result of my conditioning to, of what my abilities are? And to what degree would developing the ability to fly in your dreams then, or teleport in your dreams, be then conducive to having more of that, or to develop the ability to have telepathy in your dreams.
Yeah.
Might then translate into having more of those abilities in your waking life too.
I remember having a dream where I was walking down a road and there was like a boulevard, where there was a central, one-way road on the other side with the central grassy area with trees and stuff. But there are also every few, I don't know what distance it was, but there were these round spheres that I knew were teleportation ports.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get in one, but I knew that that's what they were.
Wow.
It was just,
yeah.
I can't, dreams are strange, you just, like I said, it's silent knowledge.
Yeah.
And, it's easy to discount all this stuff if you're a scientist and you're interested in not accepting any of this. But I guess I'm not that.
You're a Gnostic.
I'm more of a Gnostic scientist. I like science, but I also like the other side. I like the dual approach, and I want to have both.
And you don't want the scientific status quo to limit you from being open to what is that's beyond, because there's always more than what the current scientific status quo thinks it is. I mean, that's been the whole history of science, is there's always new stuff, and usually the new stuff has to go through a degree of rejection and hostility from the whatever the status quo is of what the current scientific worldview is before it becomes part of the scientific status quo.
Yeah.
So if you're not open to there being more than what is currently known, then that's not real science anyway. So, true science, which to me is interesting because true science is about exploring the unknown and making the unknown known.
Making the unknown known is at the heart of it all. Yeah, that's the Toltecs say that the original urge of creation is the intent to make the unknown known.
Mm-hmm.
That's the original, and that sounds putting the cart before the horse a little bit, but at the same time, if you read any of the creation stories, and I read a bunch of them, and they all kind of deal with that. It's like I had nothing but myself out of. There's the Indian one about I was alone. Because I was alone, I was fearful. But so out of myself, I made the whole world. It's like you create the female or you create the male first, and then the female to generate the triangles. To keep making the unknown known. Yeah.
Cool. That feels good. Good place to end.
Yeah.
Good conversation.
Yeah, one of our wilder ones.
Thanks, Keith.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas.
That's great.
Yep.